You've heard this familiar line from a man. I don't want anything serious right now, but I still want to see you. That seemingly simple statement opens up a maze of tangled emotions that you're stuck in. He doesn't commit. He doesn't move forward. But he doesn't leave either. He disappears, then comes back, as if nothing happened. Each time he returns, you feel torn in two. Part of you wants to believe that this time is different, that maybe he's changed, that this time it's for real. But the other part of you, the part that has known the pain, knows that you're walking on shards of emotional glass, painful, fragile, and ready to shatter at any moment. You're no stranger to this cycle. He's cold, you're heartbroken. Then he texts, you get your hopes up. Then he withdraws. You're lost in unanswered questions. Why can't he just choose you? Why does he say he doesn't want feelings but still tries to keep you close? Why do you keep repeating this never-ending cycle? Maybe you've tried to rationalize everything. Maybe you've blamed him, or yourself. Maybe you've been silent, then angry, then back to the same old cycle. But you haven't broken free. And deep down, you know there's more to it than meets the eye. A sense that behind those contradictory words lies a deeper truth, something he doesn't fully understand, something that could completely change the way you see the situation. What you don't know is that Carl Jung, the great psychoanalyst, once said that humans don't act solely on reason. We are driven by the unconscious, the buried parts of the soul, where conflicts, hurts, and survival instincts lurk. When a man says he doesn't want to commit, but still can't get over you, it's not a joke. It's not pure selfishness. It's an internal conflict, a split in the mind that he can't control. You're witnessing a psychological paradox that no one has taught you how to deal with. On the one hand, he feels attached, attracted to you, by your energy, your warmth, and something about you that awakens the soft side of him. On the other hand, his deep fear of losing his freedom, of being tied down, of losing himself, makes him withdraw. He's stuck. And you, the one in the middle of all those comings and goings, are caught in a vicious cycle of hope and disappointment. This situation is not uncommon. It's the silent pain of millions of women who are still asking themselves, what did I do wrong? How can I make him understand me? Should I wait a little longer? But you are here now. Not because you are like most people. You are sensitive enough to realize this feeling cannot be explained by mere logic. You feel that there is something mystical at work, as if there is an invisible thread connecting the two of you, despite all the denials. You feel his energy every time he looks at you. You see that his eyes say something different than his mouth. And you are not wrong. Today, neuroscience has proven that when a man is in contact with a woman he is strongly attracted to, his body releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. It makes him feel close, safe, and attached. Although his mouth says, not ready, his body and unconscious mind send contradictory signals. This is not deception, but an internal war. One part of him wants to run away, the other wants to stay. And you, in your presence, have unwittingly become the battleground between those two forces. But here's the thing. If you don't recognize this deeper truth, your instinctive response will be to blame, to silence, to force commitment. All of these responses, while understandable, will only push him further away. And you will feel even more inadequate, unworthy, unchosen. But what you don't know is this. You don't have to fight to be loved. You don't have to prove your worth through the commitment of a confused person. What you need is a new understanding, an approach that comes not from need, but from clarity. One that not only takes you out of the emotional maelstrom, but puts you in control of the whole game, not through tactics, but through awareness. Do you ever feel like you're on the cusp of something big? That this isn't just a relationship, but a soul lesson? That this man, whether he stays or leaves, is a reflection of what you need to see in yourself? If you feel that way, you are right. Because what is about to be revealed in the next few sections is not just about him, it is about you and the transformative power you have long carried within you, just not knowing how to use it. And now, before we move on to the next section, where the deepest secrets of the male psyche will be revealed, I invite you to pause for a moment, to write down a single word: truth. Not for me, for you. Write that word as a commitment to yourself. You are ready to look straight into your heart, into this connection, and into what is really going on behind the veneer of contradictory words. Because when you see the truth, you are no longer a victim of the "I don't want anything serious, but I still want to see you" narrative. You'll be the first to realize, hidden behind those words is a cry for help and an invitation to embark on the most profound journey of awakening of your life. When a man says he doesn't want a serious relationship, but still wants to see you, it's more than just a sign of indecision or lack of clarity. It's a clear sign that he's experiencing a deep inner split, a conflict between his conscious and unconscious, between his fears and his desires, between the man he thinks he is and the hidden self he's never dared to look directly at. Carl Jung called this the splitting of the psyche, one of the uncomfortable but essential stages of a man's psychological growth. In Jung's psychoanalytic model, every man has a feminine archetype he called the anima. It's not soft or vulnerable, but emotional, intuitive, connected, and capable of loving fully. But in most men, this anima is often repressed or cut off from consciousness by a culture of independent, rational masculinity that does not allow for weakness. When a man meets a woman who awakens his anima, which often happens to women with depth and the ability to connect spiritually, an internal civil war begins. On the one hand, his rational side, the part that has been trained by society, will speak up. Stay away. Don't get tied down. Don't lose your freedom. Don't get involved in something you can't control. But on the other hand, his awakened anima feels an inexplicable pull. He feels a deep connection to you, a sense of coming home, of being illuminated by something very old and very new. He doesn't know why, but he can't take his eyes off you. And he can't pull away from you, no matter how much his rational mind tries to pull him away. It is at the intersection of reason and emotion, of instinct and spirit, that a man's inner division is most apparent. And you, who are listening to this, may be the mirror of his deepest self. Your presence may not only make him happy, but also make him afraid. Not because you have done anything wrong, but because you have made him face himself. This is why many men, when they meet a special woman, do not immediately move forward, but pull back. They do not know that they are responding to the content of their unconscious, something that is beyond the control of their conscious mind. And you, if you do not understand this, may react in the same way, with anger, disappointment, or withdrawn into unspoken sadness. But if you understand this inner division, you will no longer be blindly hurt. You will begin to see him through the eyes of compassion and understanding, rather than expectation and control. Let's take a closer look at modern science. Recent neuroscience studies show that when a man is close to a woman with whom he has a deep connection, his brain releases oxytocin, a hormone that creates feelings of attachment, trust, and desire to build. However, oxytocin does not work alone. It has to compete with the areas of the brain responsible for fear, specifically the amygdala, which processes signals of danger and stress. As attachment increases, the amygdala can also react by alerting people to the risk of losing control, especially in people who have had past traumas or have not been taught to process deep emotions. This is why a man can feel happy when he is with you, but suddenly withdraw. His mind is on alert. This is too much. Be careful. Don't let it overwhelm you. Meanwhile, another part of him wants to continue exploring, to be closer to you. There is no winner in this battle, unless he is mature enough to reconcile the two opposing sides. And you, through understanding, not by clinging, can be the catalyst for that reconciliation. Jung once wrote, "No one becomes enlightened by imagining images of light, but by making sense of darkness." When the man you love is in a state of non-commitment but can't let go of you, It shows that his darkness is at work. But instead of running away from him or trying to fix him, the more powerful thing you can do is to maintain your own conscious presence as a light that does not impose, does not possess, simply shines. Just as Jung discovered that psychological growth comes not from avoiding conflict but from accepting and working through it, you do not need to try to erase his conflict. You just need not get caught up in it. When you remain connected to yourself, you give him the space to face himself. And that is the greatest gift one person can give another in a relationship. Imagine this. The man is standing in the middle of a bridge. On one side is the past where he is safe, but alone. On the other side is the present where he has you. Full of emotions, challenges, but also the potential for transformation. He takes a few steps and then turns around. You can't drag him away, but you can stand on the other side, radiant, peaceful, and steady. That's how you help him complete the journey he hasn't yet dared to walk. And the magic is, when you stop fighting for him and start being present for yourself, you're not just helping him cross that bridge. You're also crossing your own bridge, a bridge that takes you out of the old patterns of dependent love, of fear of abandonment, of believing you have to change someone to be loved. The split in his heart is not the end. It's a door. But it's only when you stop trying to control that door and instead become the one who lights the way to the other side that the magic happens. And in the next section, you'll discover how a woman can be a mirror to a man's soul, not by talking but by being present as she is, fearless, needy, demanding. That's when you move from being swept away to being in control of the energy field of love. And that's when the relationship stops being a struggle and becomes a place where both of you heal. When a man is torn between not wanting to commit and not being able to leave you, it's not just a reflection of his inner split. It's also a sign that you hold a very special place in his inner journey. You may not have thought about it, but your presence is more than just a part of his emotional life. You may be a reflection of his soul, someone who touches a level of his unconscious that he has never recognized. And that's the real reason why he can't leave, even though his mind is fighting against it. In Carl Jung's symbolic system, every woman who awakens her feminine energy, fully and unattached, becomes an archetype called the anima mundi, the soul of the world. This is the woman who doesn't seek external validation, doesn't wait to be chosen, but stands firm in her own presence. And it is that presence, not skills, looks, or sacrifices, that awakens the primal essence in a man. You may have thought that you need to do something to make him see your worth, but the truth is, a man does not respond to what you do, but to who you are. He senses your energy more than you think. When you are anxious, insecure, trying to control or prove something, he senses it, not in words, but in an invisible signal, an energy frequency. Conversely, when you rest in inner stillness, when you know who you are and do not need to do anything more to be worthy, he senses it too. And then a strange thing happens. He begins to open up, not because you demand it, but because he feels safe to enter the depths of his own soul. There is a saying in Eastern philosophy, water always attracts fire because water does not fight. In a relationship between a man and a woman, the same thing happens. When a woman returns to her watery nature, deep, fluid, soft, but not weak, she becomes the place where a man can put down the mask he has worn for so long. He is not forced to commit. He is not challenged to change, but he is naturally inspired to grow, to step out of his comfort zone, not out of compulsion, but out of a desire to be worthy of the vibrational frequency she is emitting. Transformation never comes from trying to convince a man that you are worthy. It comes when you no longer need convincing. When you begin to return to yourself, you not only heal yourself, but you create an energy field that makes it impossible for him to continue living in the old self. He begins to feel the difference. Something in you both scares and draws him closer. And it doesn't come from external strategies. It comes from your internal state, what Jung called magnetic presence. You may be asking, how do I get there? How can I become the woman who, without trying, inspires a man to grow, to connect, to love with an awakened heart? The answer lies not in the actions you need to take, but in a shift within you. A shift from fear to trust, from lack to fullness, from reaction to presence. Instead of asking, how can I get him to commit? Ask, how can I become the woman I want to commit to? This question brings you back to your center. It makes you stop looking outside for answers and start digging deep within, where true awakening begins. Love, at its deepest level, is not physical attraction or emotional union. True love is a process of spiritual transformation, where two souls meet, not to fill each other, but to activate each other. You do not come to complete him. You come to illuminate a part of himself that he has forgotten. And in return, when he begins to change, not because you ask him to, but because your presence makes it possible, you are transformed. This is what Jung called the chemical intersection of two individuals, where you both enter a journey of transformation, not through logic, but through living presence. Think back to a moment between the two of you. A small moment, when he looked at you as if he saw something very familiar and yet very mysterious. That moment, if you are observant, is when the mirror of your unconscious touches his soul. And when you learn to hold that mirror, not to control, not to possess, something deeper begins to take shape. He begins to be less attracted to you and more enlightened by you. The awakened woman does not hold back, does not control, does not pressure. She is present as an invisible lesson, an invitation to enter the depth of her being. And the paradox is, it is only when you stop expecting him to change that he begins to truly change. Because only when a man is seen in his entirety, both the strong and the fearful, without being judged or controlled, can he feel safe enough to step out of the shells that have protected him. In such a relationship, the woman is not the one waiting for love, but the keeper of the flame of transformation. She does not settle for what she does not want, but she does not close the door to what is blooming. She is strong enough to say, I understand you are not ready, and I understand that I am worthy of true commitment. I am open to this connection, but I am not closed to other possibilities that are better for me. That statement is not a strategy to get him to commit. It is the truth of an awakened woman. And the man, whether he realizes it or not, will feel a very different vibration. He will no longer see you as an option, but will begin to see you as an opportunity, not to be owned, but to be transformed. And if you continue to maintain that state, not because you are waiting, but because you choose to live that way, you will realize the most wonderful thing. You do not need to change anyone, do not need to earn love, do not need to fight to be chosen. You just need to return to your deepest self. And then, not only love, but life itself will begin to revolve around you as a response from the universe to a soul that has truly remembered who it is. There comes a moment, sooner or later, that every woman who falls in love with a man who is not ready for commitment must face. It is the moment when you are at the threshold of an uneasy choice. You are no longer naive enough to believe that things will change naturally, but you are not yet cold enough to retreat completely. You feel like you are being torn in two. One part wants to let go, the other part cannot let go. It is no longer just a love affair. It is an internal war. A final battle between your old self and the awakened self that is rising inside you. Maintaining your center in the midst of an emotional storm is one of the greatest challenges a woman can face. Because love, in its unhealed form, always triggers the deepest wounds. The feeling of rejection, the feeling of not being chosen, the fear of abandonment, the pain of someone not recognizing your worth, all come up at once. And if you don't acknowledge what's really going on, you'll be swept away by your emotions, losing yourself in the effort to save something that's out of your control. This is what Carl Jung called confrontation with the shadow. Not just your own shadow, but the shadow between you, all the unspoken expectations, the unacknowledged fears, and the invisible wounds that drive both of you without anyone knowing about it. When a man repeats the cycle of coming close and then going away, saying he loves you but refusing to commit, reaching out but not committing, What you're dealing with isn't him, it's you, your version of hurt, expectation, and emotional hunger. And at this point, you have three paths. Each is right, as long as it comes from awareness and not fear. The first path is to accept the status quo, not expecting change, but finding joy and growth in each moment. The second path is to choose to leave, not out of frustration or anger, but out of respect for yourself and what you truly desire. And the third path, more delicate and demanding of all, is to stay with a presence strong enough to create space for transformation, not for him, but for yourself. Whichever path you choose, the key is to walk from your center, from a place that is no longer driven by fear of abandonment or the desire to control the outcome. And this is the hardest part, holding yourself when the other person doesn't hold you, being soft without being weak, loving without being clingy, being open without letting your emotions overwhelm your mind. A woman's true power lies not in making a man change, but in her ability to remain whole, regardless of whether he changes. When you learn that, you are no longer the one waiting for love. You become the one redefining love, on your terms. Love is no longer about someone completing you, but about you expressing your whole self in every situation. And when you live on that level of energy, you no longer need love to feel complete, but love, real love, will find you. Imagine you are standing in a storm. The wind is blowing, the water is rushing, the sky is dark. You can scream, run away, find shelter. But if you stop, breathe deeply, and turn inward, you will realize, in the middle of the storm there is a quiet space, where the wind stops blowing, where all movement stops. That is where you need to stand, your center. Not because you want to be arrogant or strong, but because you have understood that from there, every decision is wise. Every step comes from wisdom, not reaction. And any love built from there has a chance of lasting. Staying centered when you have no guarantees is an act of courage. But it is also the only way to break out of the old cycle. When you no longer react with silence to punish, no longer use emotions to control, no longer try to change, you are gradually withdrawing your energy from the old script. And then something very strange happens. The other man will feel an indescribable change. He will no longer see you as a demanding person, but as a presence that forces him to face himself. A man, when he meets a woman who is centered, can no longer play the old game. Either he is forced to grow, or he will retreat, not in victory, but in recognition that he is not ready to enter the new level of love that you are. Whatever the outcome, you have won, because you are no longer a victim of circumstances, but a creator of your reality by conscious choice. You cannot control others, but you can control where you stand. And when you choose to stand in awareness, clarity, and compassion for yourself, you not only help yourself out of the pattern of suffering, but you also help him, if he is brave enough, see a new pattern of love. A love that is not based on control or fear of loss, but on intentional freedom, where two people voluntarily come together with integrity. This is the final battle, not to fight him, but to stop fighting yourself. Not to win love, but to remember who you are when you are not ruled by fear. And as you go through this battle, not with anger, but with compassion for yourself, you will realize something profound. You don't have to win in this relationship, because what you are really reaching for is a greater victory. Victory over your old self, to become the wise, strong, compassionate version of yourself that you were born to be. There comes a moment, after all the struggling, the agonizing, the silence, when you realize that the greatest victory in love is not that the man finally chooses you. The real victory is when you choose yourself, when you stop putting your happiness in the hands of others, when you realize that love is no longer a game, no longer a battle to be won or lost, but a process of profound transformation, where you return to your truest self, and from there, naturally attract what is worthy of you. When Carl Jung said that the meeting of two individuals is like the reaction of two chemicals, he was not talking about short-lived romances. He was talking about collisions deep enough to dissolve the rigid parts of the soul, to trigger transformations that the mind cannot control. Each of us, when we enter into a deep relationship, is not just looking for love. We are looking for awakening. We long for someone to see the parts of our soul that we never dared to acknowledge. And paradoxically, the people who do are often the ones who hurt us the most. Because no light shines brighter than the light of love. And no mirror reflects more deeply than the mirror of someone who makes us feel rejected. But at a deeper level, when you've weathered the storm, when you've learned to stay centered amid the doubts and hurt, you begin to realize a fundamental truth. True love doesn't shrink you. True love grows you. It doesn't cling. It sets you free. It doesn't fear abandonment. It allows you to stand firm in yourself, no matter who comes or goes. That's when love is no longer a tactic, no longer a waiting text, no longer a test, no longer an emotional game, no longer a meaningful silence. Love becomes a pure, directed presence. You don't have to pretend to be strong. You don't have to pretend you don't care. You don't have to chase after anyone or prove anything. Because when you come back to yourself, you realize that the person who deserves you doesn't need you to put on a front to be loved. The ultimate victory is when you stop losing yourself to other people's feelings. When you love without possessing. When you open up without compromising your values. When you set boundaries not out of fear, but because you love yourself enough to not settle for anything less. And paradoxically, it is that clarity, steadiness, and compassion that makes you the most attractive. Because there is nothing more attractive than a woman who knows who she is, knows what she wants, and doesn't need to do anything more to deserve it. Neuroscience has shown that when people break free of old reactive patterns, the brain begins to form new neural connections. This changes not only the way you think, but also the way you feel, behave, and attract relationships. Love, when approached from a conscious state, is no longer a series of negative emotions, but a space for you to practice honesty, trust, clarity, and compassion, both with the other person and with yourself. You will realize that your presence is a form of energy. When you are insecure, anxious, trying to guess what the other person is thinking in order to adjust your behavior, you are emitting the energy of lack and fear. But when you stand firm, not dependent on the validation of others, you are emitting the energy of abundance and peace. And it is this magnetic field that truly creates lasting connection. The right man for you will be drawn to that energy. Not because you are more beautiful, more talented, or kinder than anyone else, but because you are you, a real person, a real lover, and a real self-respecter. And if the current man cannot reciprocate that energy, cannot join you on a journey of authenticity and maturity, then you do not need to blame or regret, because you have understood that no one can give you what you have never given yourself. And that is the ultimate victory. Not that he comes back, not that he changes, not that you are committed, but that you no longer need that to feel complete. You have found a love that does not come from the outside, but from within. A love that makes you stop fighting, stop proving, stop chasing. A love that makes you stand still, steady, open, and receive. Like the light. No pressure, no limits, no demands. Jung called this union, where the separate parts of you are reconnected, where you are no longer fragmented between the desire to be loved and the fear of being hurt. You become whole. And when you are whole, you can only attract what is worthy of that wholeness. Look at the journey you have taken, from a woman who was hurt by ambiguous words, to a woman who was strong enough not to react unconsciously, from a woman who waited to be chosen, to a woman who chose herself, from a woman who begged for commitment, to a woman who created an energy field that made others decide for themselves whether they were mature enough to enter. This is not a journey of unrequited love. This is a journey of spiritual rebirth. Love, in its purest form, is a state of being. It is a light that shines from within outward. It is the ability to see others in their fear, in their hurt, in their imperfection, and yet not lose compassion for yourself. It is the ability to say, "I love you," without needing to hear, "I love you too." It is the ability to leave without closing your heart. It is the ability to stay without forgetting yourself. And if you are here, reading these last lines, know that you have entered that state of awakening. You no longer need a happy ending to know that you have grown. Because the light you have been searching for is not in the promises of others, but in the peaceful, steady, radiant presence that you have just reborn within yourself. The ultimate victory is not in having love. It is in becoming love. No longer the seeker, but the destination. No longer the questioner, but the answer. And from there, what is right will come. What is not right will fall away. Gently. Without resistance. Without regret. Because you are no longer the woman looking for love. You have become it.